Hello, my name is Gary Scudder, a professor here in the Core, and today I want to talk about Othello, or at least one part of Othello. A couple things real quick. I remember when I first chose Othello, I was kind of disappointed because I was hoping they were going to do Hamlet, because I think the entire world was in Hamlet. Except I think Othello is a great choice for 110. Second thing is, when I teach Othello in the 110 class, I do not show a film, because I try to emphasize the fact that literature is one of the main disciplines. So hence, let's just talk about literature, and let's not corrupt it by having the film, even though there are obviously some very good film version, and that's a whole other discussion for another video. What I want to talk about today is mainly one thing that Iago's wife, Emilia, says in the end of the play, which I think turns it upside down. And I'd like to talk about a lot of different things that I do with the play, but today I'm just going to focus on Emilia. Now, when I start off, anytime I have this discussion of Othello, is I always start at the end of the play and set it up like a mystery. And what I'll normally do is set aside an entire week for Othello, and on the last 5 minutes of the previous meeting, I will read this quote. And this is at the very end of the play, after they have caught Iago and he's been in trouble, and they're essentially asking him the question, why did you do what you did? And Othello, when responding to Cassio's plea of his own innocence, Othello says, I do believe it, and I ask your pardon. Will you, I pray, demand that demi-devil, obviously meaning Iago, why he hath ensnared my body and soul? And Iago says, in one of the great lines in literature, demand me nothing. What you know, you know. From this time forth, I never will speak word. And he says nothing else. And I always think the fact that he does not tell you, in a very classic James Bond villain at the end, makes it so great, because you find yourself 500 years later trying to still figure him out. So what you know, you know. So I ask the students, okay, there is your mystery to solve. Why does he do what we do? And so that sets us up for our next reading. And we start discussing what led Iago to do what he does. Now, he does give you some clues. If you look at Act 1, Scene 3, in the midst of a very long monologue, he says this. This is Iago. He says, I hate the Moor, and it is thought abroad that twixt my sheets he has done my office. So I know not if it be true, but I for mere suspicion in that kind will do as if for surety. So he's saying, overseas, anyway, everyone believes that Othello has slept with my wife, Emilia. But then he says, I don't know if it's true, but I will act like it's true. So Iago is giving you this hint that maybe what this is actually about is his desire for revenge against Othello for sleeping with Emilia. So he gives you this. But he also says, even if it's not true, I will act as if it's true, which opens up the possibility that he has other motives. This is just a really nice, convenient one. And again, that is Act 1, Scene 3. Later on in Act 2, Scene 3, he essentially makes the same claim. When talking about Desdemona, again, this is Iago, it's on page 28 in this particular version, the Dover version. He says, now I do love her too, not out of absolute lust, though peradventure I stand accounted for as great a sin, but partly led to diet my revenge. For that I do suspect the lusty Moor hath leaped into my seat. And you can figure out what that means. The thought whereof doth like a poisonous mineral gnaw my innards, and nothing can or shall content my soul till I am evened with him, wife for wife. Or failing so, yet that I put the Moor at least into a jealousy so strong that judgment cannot cure. So now we've made this second claim that Othello has slept with Emilia. So it gives us this rationale for why Iago does what he does. The question, of course, is do we believe it? And I give the students a lot of opportunities to give their theories, and it tends to be based on jealousy, although maybe not jealousy of Emilia. Is it jealousy for Desdemona? Is it, for that matter, Desdemona for Othello himself? Or is it just jealousy for power and fame? But we sort of keep in the background this notion that maybe is actually in regards to this claim. Which opens up the question, do you think Iago even really loves Emilia? And that's another question, because why would he care so much if he doesn't really love her that much? In Act 3, Scene 3, you've got the classic scene where Iago and Emilia have a private conversation. This is again 49 in the Dover book. And at one point Iago says to Emilia, "How now? What do you here alone?" And Emilia says, "Do not chide. I have a thing for you." A thing for me? It is a common thing. Also keep in mind that in 16th century parlance, thing was a synonym for the female sexual organ. So she says, I have a thing for you, and he's like, it's a very common thing. And sort of the inside joke is that she's kind of a common woman. Now, does this mean that he doesn't really love her, or that he really truly suspects that she's been sleeping around? And then in classic Shakespearean fashion, you end up with another joke, because Emilia says, "Ha," and Iago says, "to have a foolish wife." So the common thing is both her common sex organ, or it's just a common thing to have a common wife, a silly wife. It's classic sort of Shakespeare. So we have this sense of maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And Emilia is kind of an interesting character, and she plays a side role, and we don't really know what to do with her. And, you know, she's a nice counterpoint to Desdemona. Since Desdemona is so innocent and childlike, and Emilia is so worldly, you know, she's kind of a nice counterpoint. But then the question is there something else going on? And that brings us down to Act 4, Scene 3, the last scene where Emilia and Desdemona are in the room at night, and they're having a nice chat, and they keep singing the Willow song. And suddenly Desdemona asks Emilia a question, because she's now been treated very badly by Othello, who yelled at her, who slapped her. So here you have the young girl, and this is on page 76 in Dover, asking the more experienced woman this question. Desdemona says, "I have heard it said so, oh, these men, dost thou in conscience think, tell me, Emilia, that there be women do abuse their husbands in such gross kind?" Emilia says, "There be some such, no question." And then Desdemona says, "Wouldst thou do such a deed for all the world?" And she both means mistreat her husband, but also essentially sleep around on her husband. And Emilia says, "Why, would not you?" And Desdemona says, "No, by this heavenly light." And Emilia says, in a classic Emilia line, "Not I neither by this heavenly light. I might do it in the dark." And Desdemona says, "Wouldst thou do such a deed for all the world?" Because she's still so innocent she can't believe Emilia's serious. And Emilia says, "The world's a huge thing. It is a great price for a small vice." And Desdemona says, "In truth, I think thou wouldst not." And Emilia says, and this is the key line, "In truth, I think I should, and undo it when I had done. Marry, I would not do such a thing for a joint ring, nor for measures of lawn, nor for gowns, petticoats, nor caps, nor any petty exhibition. But for the whole world? Why, who would not make her husband a cuckold to make him a monarch? I should venture purgatory for it." Now the question is, why is Emilia saying this? Is she literally saying this to be almost philosophical and worldly, or is she admitting something? Is she admitting that she has essentially did sleep with Othello, and this is why Iago has his position in the first place? Because if this is what she's really admitting, then it suddenly changes our perception of Iago quite a bit. Not that he's a nice guy, obviously, but is the story more complicated than what we think? And for that matter, is Emilia and Iago much more complicated than what we think? I always raise this question with my students, and it always inspires a really nice discussion. Usually one of the students going, whoosh, which I pride myself on. So anyway, that's today. These are 5 great passages I take from Othello, which always work. So thank you.